All right, here I am on my computer. Here, a lot has been going on the past few days over the assassination of one of Kirk. That's his last name, right? Charlie Kirk. This isn't really about that. So this is about the DNS checkup. I was trying to write a programming codes in regards to creating a DNS check, like log or check the sum of a DNS report. So kind of looking at it, particularly doesn't seem too problematic. Last one I tried did quite the opposite. So this one is really about, moreover, the residual. So kind of like a DNA pair, and I've been working on this assignment project. It's mostly a prototype, kind of put it together. So it kind of scores like DNA. So I was thinking yesterday, what about, since this was a failed algorithmically imprint a input, why not create a deselection? Or what's your mind? Would you think as a deselection because it's hot? I mean, it still is working it out. So hot in DNA means it's, I guess it's protected, and then cold is not protected, like the opposite of when you eat food, right? So the challenge there is to pack it. So you have this state where you enter the code, it's recreating, certain things like a database, and then it kind of becomes normal over time, like the oxygen the cells produce, right? And then you have the residual, kind of the harder material of the cells, and then what, kind of forms it together, maybe a membrane or, something more suitable. So I'm just going to go over some of the residual programming feeds. And I've been looking at a few web pages here with it in there. Quite not what I expected, when going into, let's say, pinging the National Guard, right? You're like, oh, nothing will return zero. No, actually, it returned a Facebook profile. So, that's one instance of, not going well with the system as we speak it, in real world terms. But, let's take a look. I'll just kind of go over to a new web page, not to give any codes away, I suppose, whatever those codes are. But, we'll look at the actual code switch here and just kind of see how it flags off. In PowerShell, it's a little bit more easy, but the problem is, though, with PowerShell, it's just a general script and it's a source editor in a way, right? Like anything else, but it doesn't mean these application terms are just domains. It doesn't mean domain quit. It's banned now. No, they're real. The registry paths in a way. So when you ban something, you basically take the thing away. You take the ID of zero away. You reinforce the negative. So when you subtract one, you get less, right? So that's the point, right? You can't take things away. It doesn't work that way, right? Just as opportunity goes. But, as certain things go for, let's say military or, some sort of code secrets, or let's say a cyber attack or, nuclear strikes, right? The idea of decay is no. I mean, you collapse the system. So, and this feature, though, it is not enabled quite, because in a full feature, you would have absolute decay. Everything would just be shut down. There isn't really steps to go to one to the other. They're they're questionable, right? Because they are, as they put it, classified because they are in the middle of the age of the atomic realm, which are born from the classified age, which are extreme, right? So, and all you have to do is watch the History Channel. The show's on it. YouTube has full of them. It is not as classified as it used to be because it is so deadly. But when you look at the code and it says, okay, this is the DNS report stack, because I was writing a code to try to see how would I get my old laptop back that was stolen from me? And I was like, maybe I'll ping it, the DNS, or ping the stage there, and then it will collect or decollect the data, if that makes any sense, because you can't have something you can't have, right? So it's like, okay, DNS is the only one that stages logs or creates logs, but is incorrect. And I was thinking about it, if there's a true or false statement like in accounting, which, obviously there is some invalid points in this creation. So the code therefore would have to be stacked in sort of an original way. So it has an original method, which it would start with 1 in that path directory. But in an original path directory, which is a direction, would have a 0. So it would have a statement that's altering in a way. It's equivocal, right? Because there's no, I guess, opening to, or a non-closed statement behind a 0 statement. There is nothing that should, but as you can see, there's no way to do a lot of things. There's like some sort of system attack with logs and books. I mean, kind of like move the box around and say, yeah, maybe there is some sort of cyber attack, but maybe looking at this accounting schema, if one thing could be true, the other thing could be false. So I'm going to go into the programming code here. If you don't see my screen, so be it. There's a 0 for 0 view count. So I guess I'll just log in the data here on this set and just kind of say, oh, this is validated here and here. Who would have done that? Not with the code I could share right now, but we'll look at it right now. So maybe it's just a work day on this Sunday at 4 o'clock in the morning or in the afternoon, and nobody knows what's going on at all. So I also built a prototype for a peer-to-peer transaction for 3.4 gigahertz, and I posted on ResearchGate. So if you want to look at that, it's kind of like a formulated hypothesis. So set aside the idea of demonstrating a plot or path behind something, but actually, looking at the orchestrated gain, which is the signal itself, which was probably why it was built in the first place, to compete or compare to electrical currents. But as you can see, there's not a lot of parallels. So when you get to electrical engineering or computer science, there's not really an in-between kind of, they don't really exactly go together in a path string. Unless you're very ultra wealthy, it doesn't really work that way. And you don't just get to see through the box all the time. Well, the others die in real life, right? So we're going to go into this, and it's not always like that. And some will say, "Oh no, it's not like that at all," or they'll be like, "Oh, I can use Facebook on my computer and I can do all these things." But we'll look into what it looks like. All right. So I'm going to share my screen right now. And of course, again, this is a demonstrated code. So not entirely deceptive, but not fully entwined here. So, okay. So here's the inputted code with the DNS flag client, .ps1 for a PowerShell script. Then have usage examples for the DNS execution policy for a DNS flag client, DNS server here. So basically, if you're looking over the DNS over HTTPS, so it is pretending to be a Cloudflare system or in the midst because it is a mix. And you will find out actually, if you test these signals, that there are mixes involved with this, which are do's and don'ts in some file settings, right? JavaScript, certain things, Apache, right? So it's a 64 and 32-bit registry views for apps, and some systems will say 86, serious systems will say 86 and be persistive of that. But because a shell needs a bypass in SHA-56 or 256, right? So the more you read, the more you learn, right? So let's look at what we have. So it doesn't really say a bunch here, but it has a string name, server DOH, which is use Cloudflare DOH instead of system resolver, validate set 01, fallback if DNS falls, or content not 01. So interesting, right? So looking at this, it's interesting, right? So look at the DNS of something that might ping back 0. So let's try justice.gov. Or actually, no, let's try nsa.gov or nsa.mil, right? So we get a 0 on the system resolver, and out of cyber command, how many can you hold your hands up and say, oh, it's supposed to do that? It technically is supposed to sort of do that, right? Because it's supposed to go with the system and set, the Cloudflare, right? So go to the next one. Let's go to something that might oversee a civilian branch, obviously, like people. So justice.gov, and let's take a look. Oh, it actually pinged back a Google site verification code, obviously. Apple domain one as well. I don't have any Apple domain. This is a Windows PC, and as I could look, the code there is actually pinging me back a DNS result and answer. So you can go into more sophisticated codes here, and I think it's more obstructful, but I mean, you could even look at, probably shouldn't do that on here, but justice.gov, that's an interesting one, right? But as you can look, there's a millisecond answer, then a result code, and then, a value. For these, are they supposed to ping back things that don't exist in real life? I probably presume they don't. So let's try a DNS result for something like Google. And DNS for Google would be, same. It would just be like a personal domain, right? Okay, so it has a site system resolver here from the source, Google site verification. It has all the codes. All right, so when you have a code that is meant for a documented case like google.com, yeah, it has a resolver because it's so big. But what if you try, and I mean, I can pull it up on this site, National Guard, and I'm not trying to be funny or anything, but I might as well, just kind of show it off. I mean, if it is inside the country, I mean, it would be better than outside the country. If I spelled that right. Oh. But it is a plain atrocity what's going on in the world nowadays. Assassinations and all of the nonsense, biblical, kind of talk of what is insane, what is not insane. Is it insane to get assassinated? I agree. It's insane to get assassinated, but putting something that doesn't belong on something, something else, right? So I don't know. I mean, should we show? Let's just try something else. Let's try. I mean, we don't need to show that one. Let's try. What was the one we want to try? Do we want to try something? I mean, it should be open and free. It was YouTube though, so. So let's try something a little bit more rational. Let's try the APA. I'm not an organizer, but I am an organization basically. So let's try APA. So we'll type in APA, obviously. So apa.org. And let's see what comes about of that. I mean, if all fails, I mean, we still have something to control this. If Facebook is pinged on sort of these commands inside this DNS system, why not? Oh, my bad. Let's actually hit the prototype. Oh, okay. So we have a global document set. That sounds normal, very court-like. Okay. We have Zoom verifier. That sounds very normal. Atlassian sounds like a very sophisticated, expensive system. Sending domain, Google site verification, sort of correct. Google site verification, the spoof of all of the values, like kind of we can VPS script or whatever. So it's interesting. So let's try something like GitHub. Let's try GitHub. Let's see. What is the GitHub domain? Obviously, GitHub.com. Just kind of investigate more. What would this bracket be? GitHub.com. Oh, so we have a bunch of them. We have a bunch of LMF blocks on a JavaScript, stack system that kind of go together, a bunch of servers stacked together. These are coincident servers, basically. They're all ones that go together to share the server space for, I think, the DNS block. But that's a very good question if that's how they share the relationship. One is true, one is false. I mean, DNS is a record set, right? So, I mean, DNS wouldn't do that. Functionally, though, they're all non-adapted. They're all saying they're not adapted, right? Like they should be in that case of not using false or true, because they're taking advantage of it, right? Speed or time, strength testing, right? Because in the real world, strength and APA talk, that means we're talking to the Arabians. Strength-based. Look it up. So when you look at the value here, you can really see, there is some certainty, right? I mean, there's some certain open nodes here. Adobe has one, and Adobe has a lot of them on a lot of these things. So micro verification. Yeah, if you don't know any computer science, maybe start to begin. Obviously, it's a joke, right? But A lot of it has to do with SHA-256, right? So netblocks.google.com. You can look at these, and they're interesting. They're clearly not putting all of the data out there, but it does an IP4, so it has JavaScript, and there's these little notations here because things haven't really changed for the last decade, but they have for the worse, right? So there's just less space and more numbers recycled, basically. So you'll look at that. It even has a payment method right now. So the system must have crashed, and it's beginning to be recollected somehow. So let's look over something that's not so sensitive, right? I mean, GitHub sensitive. What about Food and Wine, or what is that? Food Network. I like food. Oh, how about Hell's Kitchen? Hell's Kitchen always is prompt to like the orders in fake world. What about my own website? Oh, okay. All right. What about my own website? I'll put my own website. atgc.lol for the project. Oh, it gave me basically a 0, but it gave me a forged account on Microsoft to have a channel assessment, basically. Oh, thanks, Microsoft, I guess. So let's try another one. So you even answered 0 on this one. So a domain, I don't know. Let's try it. National Guard, and then let's not go to the military one. Let's go to the regular one. NationalGuard.com. That's the one. Hopefully, it doesn't become too much of a problem. Oh, there you go. But I could hide it or whatever. Oh, Facebook domain verification. So, as you can say, not liable for those things, but also not hot, soft, cold, hot, soft, not secure. So, I mean, we can go over to the other ones, but the National Guard is on base right here. So, in a way, like the police are kind of like civil of that. I have a criminal justice degree and associates of that. So, it is pretty much as freedom speaking as like secure as it could get. So, it's interesting. So I think this is an interesting program. And I think it could use some recessiation. So if it were to, blank, like, kind of seal the bricks in, or like seal the DNS in, and kind of just check it and say like, okay, you're the DNS control, why are you causing such a virus on this computer, or a virus in the DNS of sorts? It says like, there's 256 kilobits of data on this at a time. This is what it is. So, I mean, it is what it is, unless there's like a large 500 million crowd that are like looking on Facebook and saying like, I could browse on Facebook. It's more of my normal thing. But, on the other end, we can go up to like something like, lo-fi, like the DOT. And check it out. And let's see, like, what's the deal? What is the transportation? They're supposed to monitor at least drunk driving, possibly, right? Or oversee some of that cabinet, right? Transportation.gov. That's how you spell it. Okay. Transportation. And a lot of people can go, no, let's try it out. Oh, so it spoofed it all, and it was like, we have the valid, API script, and that was it. We're gone. But we could try a professor's number who worked at a professional military, but yeah, I'm not him. So let's try one of my other emails. Let's try spoof that only hooks up to a link here, m2i.biz, for my business podcast. Oh, still, the resolver set to 0 to answer the result. So I guess I did good. All right. So let's try something called an API bridge or something. I mean, it's API, I guess. That wouldn't be it. IBM or AWS, Amazon. Yeah, let's try AWS. Amazon. So you have a bridge here, and I've already tested it out. So it will have a bridge here. So it's just It's like a JavaScript setting, right? Right. So, well, actually, 0. Interesting. Let's try something cooler. Let's try AT&T. Oh, not that one, obviously. Not AT&T. Try AT&T, just general AT&T.com. Actually, sir, I don't know. I'm a vampire. Let me try, actually. Oh, wow, look at all that. Safe breach domain verification, form stack domain verification, Google site verification, mixed panel domain verify. Oh, look at all these little SPs. It's like kind of like right before Apache and JavaScript got together, they made like a form verification sheet. I like it, and it even has an in-text C name. Toyota K Sago PP ATT. I don't know what that is, but it's real interesting. Let's look at the other functions that are here. They have all of those things. What if it was more ambivalent, or what if we went to JavaScript? Would the terminology, and of course I'm not really learning and not getting credit for this, so let's look at the other ones here. Oh, it is .com, right? .com. All right. From Oracle, right? Oracle. We were just looking at Oracle the other day on another assignment. So for microchips, right? Java came back with 0 for 0 too. So maybe the government just hasn't funded enough of things. It's kind of like running from like the pre-Obama phone, or like the kind of the mainframe, this is my cover, this is my resume, this is what I did. But it is that the transportation company, if we go back to it, it's like it's set and binding, right? So it does have a residual stack like the other ones, technically, guys. But when you look at the falsified data of the stack, where it does falsify certain data and it says it's true, and then you're like, oh, you can't guess this, your shit was on the Facebook, we're hooked up to the Air Force and kind of things like that, or you ping the CIA. Of course the stack can't change, right? Unless it can. But oh, I don't want it to all go away. Let's try. Let's see. Back. Oh, there we go. It can't all change, right? Unless, oh, I didn't want to do that either. All right, so it went away again. Not to happen anymore. So let's put it back all the way. Right, there we go. So I don't want it to change, so to speak. Unless you're a rapist and made these ideas happen. Double end up. All right. Because maybe they cannot change at the same time. And who commits crime? Murderers and bad people, right? So I think the value of this lesson teaches another lesson and another lesson and another lesson, but jam pack it together, right? It teaches it you have to go away unless you did something with it technically, but I mean, you shouldn't really do that unless you injected a code, which is to create. And I mean, in real life, you do this if you had a gas tank, or let's say a tank of any sort, and you put a diamond in it. Basically, there's nothing stronger than diamond except asteroids. I can show you what these asteroid eggs look like. Asteroids stronger than diamonds. I spelled diamonds wrong, so just get with me. Lawn is dilate. It's not something I want to be hanging around with, but it seems cancerous to be honest. But this is what they look like. So technically, I mean, would a DNS or a RAM be able to host sonic, invisible DNS report, or something similar that saves your RAM at least? I mean, yeah, would something like this have static that really isn't focused on? I mean, gosh, I suppose so. So, or have some sort of rock like engineering tool like that hooks up to your computer, like kind of like in one of those old school movies. I think that's really kind of insane, unless you were really down to share that data or like, kind of work with that feedback. I mean, it just seems like a lot of work to be so constructive in a way. I mean, first the box, if you look at the principle of ATGC, I mean, it's like, it's like tether, right? I mean, like it's like rope. And then, like paper or like, something combustible, like oxygen, right? Or acidic, right? So it's not really questionable right there, right? A computer is somewhat similar. So even if you went to the NGA, perhaps, which I have already, but and still, obviously, but it is what it is. So, oh shoot, so. It is what it is, right? So, I mean, even if you were to look at, USDA.gov, you have a mix here. I mean, there's a mix of primarily everything. Just because, one thing is a string and the other doesn't mean it's unjust. Food and wine, the same, right? As a point vocal, the same as like Skype, it is a registry that isn't like sound effects, like a dinosaur. It's more of like real, like like it's hooked up to an external, which is just not functioning. So like when you look at your your pad, you kind of say like, oh, I don't want it to mal-navigate with the real world. I don't want a cocaine addict, selling food to my baby child, right? At anyone, right? It doesn't matter what restaurant or whatever. And you're like, okay, I want my pad to create a Jorgen, esque kind of like function for free membership for everyone to say, hey, look at my pad, or not my pad, but look at the site's pad, and it says, oh, hey, we're a coalition of non-cocaine addicts to feed my child baby membership. So, as it functions, it's kind of like, a group that says, oh, we're food managers. We don't want that. Or like, we're like, we're race car drivers, but we're promising not to fall off the tracks and go, around the town and, cause chaos and wreck. And I'm saying this from my pad, right? Or we're NASCAR drivers incorporated or whatever, right? Or, the membership of. Or we're like, the food managers. But, with food managers, they're often poor and often is seclusive because once you do make the money, you will grow food. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's much more safer that way, right? Because no one grows food. It's recessive, right? So there's that. Or, when the principle of like, look at the strings, why Facebook? Or, not in that circumference because technically, there's Facebook and, what else? Maybe LinkedIn. I would presume, LinkedIn. I mean, did I see one of these Facebook or one of these like link requests for the DNS? Say LinkedIn. I mean, not particularly. So, it does make you question about certain things. At Food Network, the same. As ISP, at least, the binary there is a set, original unless it's stacked into the computer and it's controlling the OS 2i. Is that a thing? Incredible thing, or it's like kind of like the half of or 50 of 86. I'm not entirely sure because when I count resolution numbers, they count higher than a distribution number. So if you can count here of like if you had an ideal operating system and everyone had an ideal operating system, would it be 128? Or would it be like 86? Because in the normal mind of this operating system, it says it's 64 and 32-bit. Would I particularly trust my computer to go buy another binary resolution computer to one that can sort the binary computer resolution to one that is privileged access to any binary chain? I would probably go with the one that can control my binary assortment, right? So in a batch file or a system file, that means you have control over your residual signal. So that basically means it doesn't bounce, doesn't frequently. With this, it's made in China. So there's really no options. You just stay with it, stay with the input, stay with output. It's kind of like, like holding magnets together in your hands. It's like, okay, I can't really move it. I can't jam it. I can't move my bones, really. I can't really use my arms at all. But, it tells me, it is doing what it does, or like a brain stem, right? Or brain synapses, axioms, right? They kind of go back together or go forth, right? They don't trigger a whole chain reaction, right? That's like doing dope, right? 32-bit, I mean, it's good for parsing paper, right? Like that's the point of a blank slate paper. 32-bit, I'm not sure. Open a packet of information, right? Does not really do very much. 64-bit, same way, parses up to like 72 bits of information, really. 64-bit operating system, because it's basically 128 principal. So when you cut 128, you cut 128, 50, 60. Let's see. Let's use my calculator because my brain obviously doesn't work at this moment. Let's see. 128 divided by 2. Oh, that's 64. So maybe not that, but it does coincide with the relationship, I think. Let's see. 86 divided by 2. So that's 43. All right. So it doesn't have one. It just uses a different, function like MTP. But these things are reactive. So basically, if you're to squeeze the system, more than once, it would cause like a resolution issue. So like basically, it's proofing it for EMP resistance and certain things, DLL corruption. Typical for a programmer, I suppose. For games, I mean, I'm not entirely sure if the system was built like that, but I don't think there's an actual processing system for that, except the idea of a 64-bit architect, right? So the point of that is for a game system itself, they actually make processing for that. So okay, this is interesting because now you find a way that there is some sort of sorted residual between the programming code over there, obviously, and the resistive kind of functions that cause certain problems here. If you've ever watched the show G4 TV, if you're old enough, I know some people are old enough, then you would have a whole different list of codes here. And I'm not saying like everybody has the same code or like everybody doesn't have the same code, but looking through what you can't look through like a DNS socket, like why isn't this fixed? Fixed to something, like it should be like fixed to a channel port or something like new and resolved, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like that. Like unfortunately it doesn't seem like really like it was doing that much. So I mean, even if I took on let's say the idea of creating a fixed sprocket or something like that, I'm not even sure what that means, but I don't even know what I was doing there, but that's truly interesting. Let's see. All right. So from what you'll see, in the set parameter of all of these DNS results, return, catch switches, you'll find that there is at least one stage of this just going into really nothing. So, but you'll find that it's coming from somewhere, and there's some sort of connection point. Facebook, yeah, I could see it. I can see a long list of other sites here. Not to say it's the button, right? But there is some sort of thing just kind of laying on the floor, so to speak. It says like Facebook logged in, like connected to like the computer. I'm not saying like the computer, but like when you like go around the barrel, it says like, imports here, max, or not necessarily imports because they are purchased goods, right? People work for purchased goods as well as, they make them, right? But, when you look at the stack flow, or, kind of look at the values, you say, okay, extreme does not meet the value at which the input is. And it's not really tied to anything. It's tied to humanities, right? And it's not like, opposed or unopposed towards safety and freedom. It's just opposed to extremities. In real world persona, unless that did not happen, it'd be considered civil unrest, right? So the potential there is, one, you have civil, S or civilness, right? Which isn't really a word. It's just kind of the rightful thing to do, right? Or, true, or supportive, or least argumentative, or not really that one, but maybe more open, or an ocean kind of concept. It isn't really as sophisticated as you might think. And then you have the opposite, which is false, which is, desolated, unimportant, these really unwillful ideas. I know it seems extreme, and I know it seems like, a domain that should be created. I mean, if all these things created, but not exactly. Not if all that says true, and all these things say false. So, in that perception of a number counting, that's another equivocal question on the statement. So if there was a statement that said, it didn't falsify it, it just created a residual stack because it wasn't counting enough. I mean, that's one possibility. But, when you look at the open proportion, that's real. And, if you were to equate it towards like a fractional, one versus, the other, like a database of emotions. Emotions is a tricky one to count into fraction, right? Or, testing for the systematic, same as like positive or negative, right? Or, what they consider brackets, which is, a safer way to put the programming code. It's an example, right? So, technically, that's true. I mean, you can't have 100% of something you don't have 100% of as well. So that's true as well. HTTPS is also the same way. It does say it has a date and a stack, and it's insisted, but that's untrue as well. Because it would use like, a uni type script, right? And that's kind of a personal or organizational support as a programmer's kind of thing, right? So, or policy. I mean, overall, it can just be considered policy. So, it is, it's an if, right? If not, again. So, if the potential, or I can't even say if not, if the potential is greater than, something that it's trying to count, right? The system is terrible at accounting, but it is approximate, right? So, it's an interesting question, right? So, out of all the faulty boundaries, or trying to figure out science in some sort of obstacle way, or look through the looking glass, so to speak, there's potential there for crashing. I wouldn't say crashing the computer. I would say the DNS stack is a DNS script, right? Well, you could say it, but I mean it wouldn't be particularly true, because export or import would be 0 1. That would be equal for a database, which would feature user facts or ideas of facts, right? Technically, more of the ideas of facts, right, about the programming codes, right? Or database of material design in a way. I mean, that'd be mistaken, right? 1 to 1 millisecond or 1 negative. I don't think that would be a conjecture at all. I don't think the computer would be able to script that, right? Same as a barcode system. I mean, the United States uses the USPS to transfer mail. They already had a system before that was very similar to USPS that counted barcodes and all sorts of product factors. Was a very good system. It was very unique. These are very equivocal for what governance needed, right? And now it's very profound, as they put it. So, it is generally a question of what is wrong or right in this system, right? So, it's been questionable. So, I mean, you look at C programming or C negative, C sharp, right? They'll all bypass native or, narrative programming in the DNS world, right? Cloudflare doesn't exactly do that. And that's a very good question for that. It is like the thing that puts the house cover on the house, right? or like kind of the DNS registry statement in the DNS. A lot of governments or computer companies do that. I don't think they do, especially with JavaScript orientation. Oracle, however, would it have a script that can do that? Can you have one of something and it could do something else for you if you had two, but you just don't know about it? I don't think so either. So the particularities of that, I would say, are probably a PostScript example. So like kind of like Netscape or like, the other browsers with Netscape, kind of like, the old ones with like, the Digimon, little circles that play soccer, or like, sea monkeys. Or like, ThunderScript, or the one for Mozilla, right? Those are all 32-bit operating systems. Formerly Netscape, evaded itself with Opera and went to 64-bit. But I just don't see it happening. I mean, Apple went to 56 OS or something like that with their color exchange to ratio exchange, but then scrapped it all together and went with AIM, or what's the other company, right? So besides Intel. So particularly, there is a challenge here that creates a challenge, right? So would you complete it with the CPU? Probably not, because it is so sophisticated. But 64 operating systems depend on the CPU to create a challenge for the computer and the motherboard. So that motherboard would create the script and send it to RAM, right? So it would bypass those functions and would send a 1 to 0. Thank you. My computer wanted to recognize that an OS and a CPU are very similar things. And, again, a lot of these things are like kind of like Ask Jeeves kind of things, right? So the potential there is like a registry that really doesn't do much. Yeah. But it does send an overview bit panel of it. So would it say, this is a Facebook profile? I probably would say it wouldn't, unless the brackets didn't go together in the right frame. I would say no. I mean, if it was a car bracket, a window bracket, for an engine, a car bracket, would you use ones for window on your car? Or would you use, car ones for a window? I mean, the same principle applies, right? Almost, right? So the potential there is like, it's counting, but not counting in a way. It took it all, it's ready to trade information now. Almost like that, right? Like it's signaling like an old, ex-Soviet kind of like, Sputnik signal of like, oh, we're in the house right now. We're on Facebook. We're doing whatever. We're going to try to restart the signal right now and, outcast the world, right? It doesn't exactly work that way. So, je sais, like it doesn't actually, fair, right? It doesn't, say, this or that. It just says, the digit is, and the digit is like it doesn't really add, it doesn't subtract, it doesn't tell, what is this statement, what is, the next statement, what is the next statement. It's just like, this is a good way to bypass the file. Like it says like, if the DNS like a sorter didn't work and that 255, ampium of like, what does your DNS report say? Right. It will say, this is, none. It hasn't been set, it hasn't been created, and it has a Stack Overflow. So, from another system, composite to say, oh, the system had an error function, whatever, or the DNS report on the PNS code for whatever PM1 file on the Windows computer say, no go. It's like enough is enough. Like you've been to haywire with these numbers for far too long. So like even typing like a script in here, like that would do nothing at all, wouldn't register. AI, I mean, it wouldn't really register either. But the unique part of it would be is that it has a script that doesn't equal anything. Does it equal, the same, volume of a millimeter, or does it equal the same millimeter of like, hashtag or like an RNS code for it was called 256. So the particularities of that would be a number in the thousands, right? So you'd have like, any set number. And I mean, you can go to any set number, you could have the number, right? Or you could have the functional number that's original 1000, but it's not built on a stack. So you can't have the government's computer. It's the government's computer. But you can have, that's a recreational number. So your point of conjecture would be like, narrowing the path between the script and a substance. And in life, you would consider that -1, one reinforcement. So if you're going to pick a 0 reinforcement, it's now categorized into something opposing. It's looping, right? So it means it's reused. So particularly, are any of these DNS stacks reused in a programming code? So you have a 0 stack, followed by a stack that is humble in a way. So it has more or less, it gets cut off and it's scripted. So it'll have a spot or a function that is representing a code that is greater though than or fourth the number sum. So that means it basically equivalent says system settle down, the number is infinity, but we'll have a solution. So the answer didn't come to my computer right then, but the same thing for if the stack was overflowed and it created a system error, which was a duplicated error, and it said script system will have a residual here, but don't create a clockwork of the residual one. Will come with some random number, right? So the potential there is kind of like an engine block, right? Don't use this for that. Don't use RAM 256 as a RAM for a sorter for a sheet 256. Kind of like using plutonium and platinum for certain things, or palladium and platinum. One will burn you and scar you for life, and then one will heal you. One will poison you. And one will clean you. In the same way, the same chemicals can do the same thing on the same day, but the same thing is they shouldn't be narrowed down. They shouldn't be touched by certain people. So the potential there is kind of like the Boolean math equation, but your computer can kind of pick up differentials. I think it's interesting, but it doesn't really do much. So out of the potential scripts, there's a positive reference error, and I think the DNS did prove it. So you have a positive insistence. If a value does not create any sum because the value is already negative, right? It's already negatively uncertain point. So the value is almost duplicative, possibly. So it has a potential to have a value or have a feature to it. So basically, the value could be a sum of a shared agreement, which we were I am testing in the project of feature correlations between the peer-to-peer interface and this conjecture. So I guess I'd have to look back at the script here of what exactly is this do, right? It creates a HTTPS unique interface, so it's static-y or static resolved. It has a 3264 bits, so it has operating system compatibility. The nature is native, so it has residual feature, especially with the registries. As you can see, there's a registry there as a fallback. So there is a potential that it wants to create a charter. If it is a charter or not a charter, or it is a answer, the computer might say, what's the answer, ANS? Or what is the resolve of the computer destination DNS resolve, which would be forward and backwards to a 0, a resolve null.dll, because it wouldn't be a script system fix, because it wouldn't take this type of keyboard to fix. It'd be a quote and then a where. So where, kind of like in a programming, compatibility would be to bring in, to hop, to HOP, right? So that potential, and then if you go back at the 80s, right, you have the MPEG file. You have certain things like the MP2 that came about and tells you you are putting a fixed position in the script. Have you seen Windows do anything different since its OS came out from Vista or Windows 7 that's done any of these? I really haven't. So the potential there is it's a fixed versus a hot system. Windows has yet to understand the meaning of what cold means or hot means. Hot means to be safe, right? In a way, congruent to be, safe. If it is not paper friendly or oxygen friendly, computer that's hot is a lot safer, right? Computer heat is all it needs to concentrate on computer breathe, or a computer singe, computer burn, computer have pain with wetness, computer wouldn't really not understand it. Computer doesn't understand things at all. So, embevically, it doesn't have a fixed system that creates, something that is tolerable to the computer. So, I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Can the computer get jammed at all? Can the computer have a DNS report that jammed? Can it print out 1 and 2 at the same time? Technically, okay, it can. So it has, a stack as a delivery method and has an A function to that. So the script will just, wall itself to the open network or whatever engagement that signal says, and it will send it to it. But it's not exactly that simple, just like the stack is, right? A radio signal is the same way, it just is a message or counter-optive message. So the potential there is a unique identifier. Maybe it's an error. I mean, if this was my DNS stacks on my computer, it wouldn't write at all. It just creates a function that says, right, the message is the same for them as well. So why would all the stacks for all the messages be relayed on something like the government computer? What about an instance of it being in Facebook or being in residual? Do you think it should have, a necessary apprehension to say, yes, this is the stack quality and control. Yes, we found out there was, let's say, arsenic in the computer, or there was poison in the food. It was causing food poisoning, or the milk had been, green, or let's say the oils in the food that caused the food not to look bad. But it preserved it for so long, it didn't look bad, right? And the computer got confused, right? It was made out of non-cameras, or it wasn't the upgraded metal of palladium to go and test the material. It was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. But not really to the science. They said, oh, we need a camera that's made out of more advanced metal, which is the metal made out of, the stuff that's fueling things, not the lithium. So the potential there is, yeah or no, but the system kind of guesses itself. It's like, yeah, kind of can't do that. It's kind of a bunch of numbers right now, but can't really communicate. So, out of that, I mean, there's not really much of a vision. You just have to circle the message, kind of saying if my computer can't count, let's say if it could count, would it be different than half the other kids, if let's say they could count, would there be a difference? I mean, in most systems you have to, range, the fact that, if there is, a potential for being, broken down or divided, right, there is a function that will not, work, right? So you can't do everything of everything. Same for ramps or everything, right? You can only cut it in two. So the potential maybe in this instance is you have to deselect it, register it, compress it, and let it go on. The acidic gaseous, maybe it wouldn't matter. So maybe, in the instance of the National Guard being on the Facebook profile, I mean, maybe rethink it again. See what I can do in this situation. No one's looking, no one's seeing. But it's the potential that matters. I've been sick for the past couple of days. I'm like, maybe this will fix the issue at hand. Maybe this will be, accounting too. But maybe this will be kind of a little bit more of, why does this happen? Maybe it's a pipeline decision. Pipeline's the most corrupt, right? Or in the instance of criminal justice, right? Maybe the computer hallucinated again or something, or maybe it's just kind of Cloudflare only allows of one of these. Or maybe it only allows of one request per bad request or something like that. Or maybe the fixed position just needs to be increased to 2 to make the computer more aware. So as you can see, it can't sync. So it's already even 0, which I already tested, and then number 1, which keeps creating oh, here's all the requests here, right? You're common day, like you're squeezing water while in public, and then you have the number 2. So the request there will overstack the flow technically, right? But then it won't, because it won't be sealed. So it will take, the consumer product, and it will go float down the system there until somebody picks it up, right? So technically there's that, or there's the instance of creating ultimately decay. So like with a water bottle, you're already doing the hand language for decay. So if the system was decayed, right, in 2 steps, right, it might be more interesting, right? So it would probably be more efficient, it'd be more reality, but would it be, something you could be rememberable, right? Well, unless instantly, you'd have more data, you'd save more data. And the point is, it's not saving data, it's a flag request, the opposite direction. And it's creating flag requests via our flag request, which is going our direction, which is 1 and 0, proportionally human to computer interface, whereas this is a computer to human interface. Think about, and I'm going to try to fix it like that. So an interesting concept, have some published work or sort of on ResearchGate. If it were to disappear, like if I were to ever look at, go over to Tumblr here, Tumblr. And you ever find something like my AI account, and I mean, don't go looking for it, obviously, because it's now a disciplinary act on Facebook, but it'll be still up here. A lot of work will go into this computer, set. It's not exactly just duh, 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 or duh, duh, duh. It's more of like, the precious time of finding residual, signals, and then kind of piecing them together one by one, just to say, oh, okay, so now it's not a bypass method. It's more of a method to find a residual, to find effects for the residual. Because things don't just exactly cancel. They find a way to do that. Right? So even if it was deleted through space and means, wouldn't have the last 4 digits and, code copyrighted on it. But maybe another investigation to go re-up again. So this will be an interesting video to be saved on my computer.